I didn't say a word. I just stood there on the sidewalk, holding the bottle of champagne I'd bought to celebrate my daughter's promotion, and watched her through the restaurant window. She was laughing, surrounded by her colleagues, her boss raising a toast in her honor. The same daughter who had called me 3 hours earlier and said, "Dad, please don't come tonight. I told everyone you couldn't make it. My name is Richard Holloway. I'm 63 years old." And that night, standing outside Marcello's Italian Bistro in downtown Chicago, I learned exactly how much my daughter was ashamed of me. But here's the thing about shame. It has a funny way of coming back around. Let me start from the beginning. My wife, Catherine, passed away when our daughter Emily was just 7 years old. Ovarian cancer. It took her 8 months, from diagnosis to funeral. I remember holding Catherine's hand in that hospital room, promising her I would give Emily everything, every opportunity, every chance at a good life. What I didn't promise was that I would spoil her. See, by the time Catherine died, I had already built Holloway Hospitality Group from the ground up. Started with a single diner in Gary, Indiana back in 1985. Worked 18-hour days. Slept on a cot in the back office. Poured every penny back into the business. By 1995, I owned 12 restaurants across the Midwest. By 2005, I had expanded to 47 locations. By 2015, Holloway Hospitality Group was a $200 million company with properties in 15 states. But Emily never knew any of this. After Catherine died, I made a decision. I'd seen too many wealthy kids grow up rotten, entitled, lazy. I'd watched my own business partners' children become monsters, expecting everything handed to them, treating people like garbage because they thought money made them special. I wasn't going to let that happen to my daughter. So I created a different life for her. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom house in Oak Park. I drove a 10-year-old Honda Accord. I told Emily that I worked as a cook at a restaurant downtown, which was technically true. I did work there. I just happened to own it, along with 72 other properties. The company was run day-to-day by my partner, Marcus Webb, and a team of executives. I showed up to board meetings in a separate building, wearing suits Emily never saw. The rest of the time, I wore my cook's whites and worked the line at our flagship location, Holloway's Original, just like I had when I started. Emily grew up thinking we were lower middle class. She got a part-time job at 16. She applied for scholarships for college. She learned the value of $1 because she thought we didn't have many of them. And I was proud of her. So proud. She graduated from Northwestern with a degree in marketing. Got a job at a mid-sized advertising firm called Preston & Associates. Worked her way up from assistant to coordinator to manager over 6 years. And 3 weeks ago, she called me with excitement in her voice. "Dad, I got promoted. Senior account director. They're throwing me a party at Marcello's on Friday." "That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you." "Thanks, Dad. About the party." There was a pause. I could hear her hesitation through the phone. "What is it?" "Well, it's kind of a fancy thing. Clients will be there. My boss, the VP of the company." "Okay. I don't want you to feel uncomfortable, with all those corporate people." I understood what she was really saying, but I wanted to hear her say it. "What do you mean, Emily?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Dad, I told them you couldn't make it, that you had to work." "I see. It's just they don't need to know about. I mean, it's not important what you do for a living. I just don't want them judging me." "Judging you for what?" "For having a dad who's a cook. Okay? Is that what you wanted me to say?" Her voice had turned defensive. "I'm sorry, Dad, but these people are different. They went to Ivy League schools. Their parents are lawyers and executives. I've worked so hard to fit in, and I don't want them looking at me differently." I felt something crack inside my chest. Not break, just crack, like a warning. "So you don't want me there?" "It's not that I don't want you there. I just think it would be easier if I stayed away." "Dad, don't make this a big thing. Please. It's just one party. I'll come see you this weekend. Okay? We'll celebrate together. Just the two of us." I took a deep breath. "All right, Emily. If that's what you want." "Thank you, Dad. I knew you'd understand. Love you." She hung up before I could respond. I sat in my small office at Holloway's Original, staring at the phone. Around me, the sounds of the kitchen carried on. Pans clanging, orders being called, the sizzle of steaks on the grill. For 30 years, I had kept my secret to protect her, to make sure she grew up humble, hardworking, grateful. Instead, I had raised a daughter who was ashamed of me. That Friday, I couldn't help myself. I told my kitchen manager I was leaving early. I bought a bottle of Dom Perignon from the wine shop on Michigan Avenue. I put on my cleanest button-down shirt, the one I wore to parent-teacher conferences when Emily was young, and I went to Marcello's. I wasn't going to go in. I just wanted to see her, to watch her moment of triumph from afar, to feel proud of her, even if she didn't want me there. I found a spot on the sidewalk across the street, partially hidden by a bus stop shelter. Through the restaurant's large front windows, I could see the private dining room where the party was being held. Emily looked beautiful. She wore a navy blue dress I'd never seen before. Her hair was done up elegantly. She was standing at the center of a group of well-dressed professionals, gesturing animatedly as she told some story that made everyone laugh. A man in an expensive suit, someone I assumed was her boss, handed her a small box. She opened it and pulled out what looked like a crystal award. The group applauded. I smiled despite the ache in my chest. My little girl, all grown up, successful, happy. Then something changed. An older gentleman approached Emily. Gray hair, distinguished, wearing a suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. He said something to her, and I saw her face transform. The confident professional disappeared, replaced by something almost desperate to impress. They talked for several minutes. At one point, the man gestured toward the window, toward the street outside, and Emily turned to look. For a split second, I thought she might see me, but she didn't. Instead, I watched her face contort with something like disgust. She said something back to the man, shaking her head emphatically. They both laughed. I couldn't hear the words. I didn't need to. 20 minutes later, as the party started to wind down, I watched Emily gather her things. She hugged colleagues, shook hands with the executives, then she did something that made me step closer to the window. A young man approached her, tall, handsome, wearing a suit that screamed money. He put his arm around her waist with a familiarity that told me this wasn't their first meeting. Emily leaned into him, smiling up at him in a way she used to smile at me when she was a little girl asking for ice cream. They kissed. Not a friendly peck. A real kiss. The kiss of people who were together. I didn't know Emily had a boyfriend. As I processed this, the group started moving toward the exit. I stepped back into the shadows of the bus shelter, clutching the bottle of champagne. They came out onto the sidewalk. 8 of them, including Emily and her mystery boyfriend. I heard their voices clearly now. "Emily, that was such a lovely speech," a woman said. "Your parents must be so proud." "Oh, thank you. My mom passed away when I was young, and my dad—" Emily paused, and I held my breath. "My dad couldn't make it tonight. Work stuff." "What does he do?" the woman asked. Emily laughed, a dismissive, embarrassed laugh that cut through me like a knife. "He's a cook. At some diner. Honestly, I barely see him. We're not that close." The group made sympathetic noises. Her boyfriend pulled her closer. "Well, you've done incredibly well for yourself, considering your background," the man in the expensive suit said. The same man who had talked to her inside. "Most people from humble circumstances don't have your drive." "Thank you, Mr. Preston." "So this was the company's owner. I've worked hard to be here. It shows." He glanced at the boyfriend. "And Derek tells me you two have exciting news?" Emily blushed, holding out her left hand. Even from 20 feet away, I could see the diamond catching the streetlight. "We're engaged. As of last weekend." The group erupted in congratulations. Hugs, exclamations. More champagne was mentioned. I stood frozen. My daughter was engaged, and I had found out on a public sidewalk, eavesdropping on a party I hadn't been invited to. "We're having a small engagement party at Derek's parents' house next month," Emily said. "Very intimate, just close friends and family." "Will your father come to that one?" someone asked. Emily's boyfriend Derek answered before she could. Emily's dad isn't really part of her life anymore. He's, well, let's just say he never quite figured out how to be successful. Some people just don't have the ambition. He said it with a condescending smile, like he was being generous by not saying something worse. We're keeping the wedding pretty small. Family on my side, of course, but Emily's side will just be a few close friends. Emily said nothing. She just stood there, tucked under Derek's arm, and nodded. That's when I stepped out of the shadows. Emily, her head snapped toward me. Her face went white. Dad, what are you doing here? I walked toward the group, still holding the champagne bottle. I could see the panic in her eyes, the desperate calculation of how to minimize the damage. I came to congratulate you on your promotion. I looked at the group, at their curious faces, at Derek's slightly sneering expression, and apparently on your engagement, which I just learned about. Dad, this isn't I was going to tell you. When? I kept my voice calm, quiet, the way I'd learned to do in boardrooms when dealing with difficult negotiations. At the wedding? Or would that have been too uncomfortable for your colleagues? Mr. Holloway, I presume? Derek stepped forward, extending his hand with the confidence of someone who had never been refused anything in his life. I'm Derek Preston, Emily's fiancé. I looked at his hand, then at his face, then at the older man standing behind him. Preston, I said. Any relation to Theodore Preston? Of Preston and Associates? My father. Derek's smile widened. He owns the company. Of course he does. I turned back to Emily. Can we talk? Privately? Dad, this really isn't the time. I think it's exactly the time. Emily glanced at Derek, who shrugged. Go ahead, babe. I'll wait. We're all going to the Velvet Room after this anyway. She walked toward me, heels clicking on the sidewalk, arms crossed defensively. What is it, Dad? I looked at my daughter, this woman I had raised, this woman I had sacrificed everything for, this woman who was standing here, in her expensive dress, wearing an engagement ring from a man who had just called her father a failure to her face, and she hadn't said a single word in my defense. I just wanted to give you this. I handed her the champagne. To celebrate, she took it, looking at the label. Her eyes widened slightly. Even she knew enough to recognize Dom Perignon. Dad, how did you... This is like a $300 bottle. I know. How did you afford... I've been saving. I looked at her, memorizing her face. I've been saving for 30 years, Emily, waiting for this moment, for when my daughter would finally be happy enough to share her life with me. Her expression flickered. For just a second, I saw the little girl who used to sit on my lap and help me stir cake batter, the teenager who cried on my shoulder when her first boyfriend broke up with her, the young woman who hugged me so tight at her college graduation and said, I couldn't have done this without you, Dad. But then she glanced back at Derek and his father and her colleagues, and the flicker died. Thank you for the champagne, Dad. I'll call you this weekend, okay? Will you? Yes, I promise. But I have to go now. We have reservations. She leaned in and gave me a quick, sterile hug. The kind of hug you give a distant relative you're obligated to acknowledge. Congratulations on the promotion, I said as she pulled away. And on the engagement. I hope you'll be very happy. Something in my tone made her pause. She looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time that night. Dad, are you okay? I'm fine, sweetheart. Go enjoy your party. She hesitated a moment longer. Then Derek called her name, and she turned and walked away. I watched them all pile into a waiting car service. Through the window, I saw Emily laughing at something Derek said, the champagne bottle tucked under her arm like a trophy she'd earned. The car pulled away. The street grew quiet. I stood there alone on the sidewalk, 63 years old, watching my daughter drive out of sight. Then I pulled out my phone and called Marcus Webb. Richard, everything okay? Marcus, I need you to do something for me. I need a full background check on Derek Preston and his father Theodore Preston. Company financials, personal assets, everything. There was a pause. Marcus had worked with me for 25 years. He knew when to ask questions and when to just act. I'll have it on your desk Monday morning. Make it Sunday. Done. Anything else? I thought about my daughter's face when she saw me. The panic, the shame, The desperate wish that I would just disappear. Yes. I want a complete audit of every business relationship we have with Preston and Associates and their affiliated companies. Properties, contracts, accounts, everything. That's going to be extensive, Richard. We do a lot of business with them. I know. That's why I want to see it all. I hung up and walked to my car. The Honda Accord, 10 years old, parked 3 blocks away so Emily wouldn't see it and be embarrassed. As I drove home, I thought about the last 30 years. Every sacrifice, every choice, every moment I'd spent in that kitchen, wearing my cook's whites, pretending to be something less than I was so my daughter could learn to be something more. I had failed, not at building a business, not at making money, but at the one thing that mattered most. I had raised a daughter who measured her father's worth by his job title and his bank account. A daughter who would rather pretend I didn't exist than admit where she came from. The irony was almost funny. Emily thought I was poor. She thought I was a failure. She was planning to marry into the Preston family because she saw them as everything I wasn't. But here's what Emily didn't know. She didn't know that Holloway Hospitality Group owned the building where Preston and Associates rented their office space. She didn't know that I was the majority silent partner in the investment fund that had provided Preston and Associates with their startup capital 15 years ago. She didn't know that Derek Preston's trust fund was managed by a firm in which I held a controlling interest. She didn't know that the restaurant where she'd just celebrated her promotion, Marcello's Italian Bistro, was one of my properties. She didn't know that her entire world was built on a foundation that I had laid, brick by brick, while she was too ashamed to acknowledge I existed. And she was about to find out. Sunday morning, Marcus came to my house with 3 boxes of documents. We spread them across my dining room table, and I spent 12 hours reading through every page. The picture that emerged was not flattering to the Preston family. Theodore Preston had built his advertising agency on charm and connections, not competence. Over the past 5 years, the company had been hemorrhaging money. They'd lost 3 major accounts. Their debt had tripled. The only thing keeping them afloat was the favorable lease they had on their office space. The office space that I owned. Derek Preston was even worse. Despite his expensive suits and confident smile, he had never held a real job. He'd been given a VP title at his father's company, but the background check revealed he spent most of his time playing golf and accumulating credit card debt. His trust fund, which his family bragged about at every opportunity, had been quietly depleted to cover his gambling losses. There was almost nothing left. I understood now why Derek was marrying Emily. She was smart, hard-working, on the rise. And she came from nothing, which meant she'd be grateful for everything the Preston family pretended to offer. They were using my daughter as a life raft, and she was too blinded by their shiny packaging to see she was the one doing the saving. I made my decision on Sunday night. Monday morning, I put on my best suit, the one I kept in the back of my closet, behind the cook's whites, the one that had been tailored on Savile Row during a business trip to London. I drove to the Holloway Hospitality Group headquarters in the Loop, the office I never visited when Emily might notice, the office with my name on the building. I called an emergency board meeting. By 10 a.m., I had initiated a formal review of all contracts with Preston and Associates. By noon, I had instructed our legal team to prepare notices of lease termination for the Preston building, citing violations that had been overlooked for years as a professional courtesy. By 3 p.m., I had contacted the investment fund about calling in the loans that were keeping Preston and Associates barely solvent. By 5 p.m., I had made a single phone call to an old friend at the Chicago Tribune's business desk. Then I went home, changed back into my regular clothes, and waited. The dominoes didn't fall immediately. They never do. It takes time for things to collapse, for people to realize the ground beneath them is shifting. 3 days later, Emily called me. Her voice was strained. "Dad, something strange is happening at work." "What do you mean?" "There's been some kind of audit. The executives have been in meetings all day. Mr. Preston looks like he's seen a ghost." That does sound stressful. Derek says it's nothing, just some routine financial stuff. But I heard someone say something about their lease being terminated. The building where we work? Apparently the landlord is pulling out. Landlords can be difficult. I said. Sometimes they have their reasons. It's weird, though. Derek says his family has had that lease for 15 years. Why would someone suddenly cancel it now? I couldn't say, sweetheart. How's the wedding planning going? She hesitated at the change of subject. It's fine. We've set a date. June 15th. At Derek's parents' estate. That sounds lovely. Am I invited? The silence on the other end of the phone told me everything I needed to know. Dad, about that. Derek and I have been talking, and we think it would be better if the wedding was just smaller, more intimate. I don't want you to feel out of place. Out of place at my own daughter's wedding. It's not like that. It's just, the Prestons have certain expectations, their friends, their social circle. I don't want anyone to be uncomfortable, including me. Dad, please don't make this harder than it has to be. I sat back in my chair. Through my kitchen window, I could see the backyard where Emily used to play as a child, the swing set I'd built with my own hands, the garden her mother had planted that I'd maintained for 20 years after she died. Let me ask you something, Emily. When you look at me, what do you see? What do you mean? It's a simple question. What do you see? A father? A cook? A failure? An embarrassment? Dad, that's not fair. What's not fair is finding out about your engagement from a sidewalk, Emily. What's not fair is being told I'm not welcome at my own daughter's promotion party. What's not fair is hearing your fiancé tell a group of strangers that I'm not part of your life because I never figured out how to be successful. He didn't mean it like that. Then how did he mean it? She didn't answer. Emily, I have spent the last 30 years trying to give you a good life. I wanted you to grow up humble, to understand that success is earned, not given, to know the value of hard work. I thought if you didn't know about the money, you'd become a better person. What money? Dad, what are you talking about? It doesn't matter now. What matters is that I failed. Despite everything I tried to do, I raised a daughter who would rather pretend her father doesn't exist than admit he works in a kitchen. That's not true. I love you, Dad. Do you? Because love doesn't look like what you've been showing me, Emily. Love doesn't shut people out. Love doesn't choose social status over family. Love doesn't stay silent when someone calls your father a failure. I could hear her crying now. Soft, quiet tears. I'm sorry, Dad. I know I haven't been. I've just been so focused on building a life for myself, on being successful, on proving that I could make something of myself, despite what? Despite having a father who loved you? Despite having a stable home and food on the table, and someone who showed up to every school play and every soccer game and every important moment of your entire life? Despite being poor. The words exploded out of her. Do you know what it was like, Dad? Growing up watching all the other kids with their nice clothes and their vacations and their big houses, knowing that you worked so hard but we never seemed to have enough. I told myself that when I grew up, I would never be poor again. I would never be looked down on again. And now I've finally made it. I've finally become someone, and I can't let anything hold me back, including me. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Another long silence. I could hear her breathing, trying to compose herself. Dad, what do you want from me? I want you to make a choice, Emily. A real choice, with full knowledge of who you are and where you come from. But you can't do that yet. You don't have all the information. What information? You'll find out soon enough. I love you, Emily. No matter what happens, I want you to remember that. I have always loved you. I hung up before she could respond. The next few weeks were chaos for the Preston family. The business press picked up the story first. Preston and Associates was under investigation for financial irregularities. Their primary investor was demanding immediate repayment of outstanding loans. Their lease had been terminated with only 60 days' notice. Then came the personal revelations. Derek's gambling debts became public knowledge. His depleted trust fund was discussed on financial blogs. Someone leaked records showing that the Preston family's vaunted estate was mortgaged to the hilt. By the end of the month, Theodore Preston had filed for bankruptcy. Derek had been forced to move back in with his parents. The wedding, I heard through channels, had been postponed indefinitely. Emily called me 17 times during this period. I didn't answer. Finally, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, She showed up at my door. I almost didn't recognize her. The polished professional was gone. She wore jeans and a wrinkled sweater. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her eyes were red from crying. "Can I come in, Dad?" I stepped aside and let her enter the house where she'd grown up. She walked through the living room slowly, like she was seeing it for the first time. "Dad, I need to tell you something." "Okay." Derek broke off the engagement. She laughed bitterly. "Or I did. I'm not even sure anymore." Everything fell apart so fast. His family is ruined. He blamed me somehow. Said I was bad luck. Said he never should have gotten involved with someone from my background. "I'm sorry." "No, you're not." She turned to face me. "And you shouldn't be. He was a terrible person. I just couldn't see it. I was so desperate to be part of their world that I ignored every red flag. What made you finally see? Losing everything." She sat down on the couch, the same couch where she'd watched Saturday morning cartoons as a kid. When the news broke about Preston and Associates, I got called into a meeting with HR. They said the company was restructuring. They said my position was being eliminated. They fired you. They said it wasn't personal. But I saw the way they looked at me. I was Derek's fiancé. I was contaminated by association. What did you do? I went home to my apartment, the one Derek convinced me to get. The one I could barely afford, with the expensive furniture and the city views that I thought made me somebody. She shook her head. I sat there alone, and I realized something. I had spent so much energy trying to become someone else that I'd lost track of who I actually was. "And who are you, Emily?" She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I'm your daughter. I'm Catherine Holloway's daughter. I'm the girl who grew up in this house, in Oak Park, with a father who made her breakfast every morning and helped her with her homework and never once made her feel like she wasn't enough." She started crying in earnest now. I sat down beside her and let her lean against my shoulder, the way she used to when she was small and had scraped her knee. "I'm so sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry for everything. For the party, for the engagement, for being ashamed of you. You didn't deserve any of it." "No," I said quietly. "I didn't. Can you ever forgive me?" I thought about that question carefully. Forgiveness is easy to grant and hard to earn. I had forgiven Emily the moment I saw her standing on my doorstep. But that didn't mean we were done. "Emily, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you a long time ago." "What is it?" "I'm not who you think I am." She pulled back, looking at me with confusion. "What do you mean?" "My name is Richard Holloway. I'm the founder and majority owner of Holloway Hospitality Group. We operate 73 restaurants across 15 states, along with numerous real estate holdings and investment portfolios. Our company is worth approximately $250 million. I am, by most measures, a wealthy man." Emily stared at me. Her mouth opened and closed several times, but no sound came out. "I've been hiding this from you since you were 7 years old," I continued. "Your mother and I decided together, before she died, that we didn't want you to grow up with the burden of inherited wealth. We wanted you to earn your own success, to understand the value of hard work. So I pretended to be a simple cook while my partner ran the company. That's not possible." She stood up abruptly, backing away from me. "You're lying. You have to be lying." "I'm not, sweetheart." "But we were poor. We lived in this little house. You drove that old car. I had to get a job in high school. I had to apply for scholarships." All true, and all by design. "Why?" The word came out as a scream. "Why would you do that to me?" "Because I loved you. Because I wanted to protect you from becoming the kind of person who measures worth by wealth." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Well, congratulations, Dad. Your plan worked perfectly. I became exactly that person anyway. I was ashamed of you because I thought you were poor. And now you're telling me you were rich the whole time?" "Yes. So all those years, all those times I felt embarrassed about our house, our car, your job, it was all a lie? It was all a choice. My choice. To give you a chance to become someone good. But I didn't." She was pacing now, her hands in her hair. "I didn't become someone good. I became someone who would exclude her own father from her wedding because she was worried about what rich people would think. I became exactly the monster you were trying to prevent. Emily, no, don't. Don't try to make me feel better. She stopped pacing and faced me. This is insane. This is completely insane. I don't even know what to think. Then don't think. Just feel. What do you feel right now? She was quiet for a long moment. The anger slowly drained from her face, replaced by something more complex. Grief, maybe. Or recognition. I feel like I've been living someone else's life, she finally said. Like I've been chasing something that was never real. The Prestons, the promotion, the fancy apartment. None of it was me. It was just a costume I was wearing because I was afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid of being you. She sat down again, this time in the armchair across from me. Not afraid of being poor. Afraid of being content with less. Afraid of being happy with simple things. Because if that was enough for you, maybe it should have been enough for me. And that terrified me. Why? Because Mom died. And you just kept going. You went to work and came home and cooked dinner and helped me with my homework like everything was normal. Like losing her hadn't destroyed your entire world. I needed you to be broken, Dad. I needed you to show me that losing things mattered. But you never did. I felt tears forming in my own eyes now. After all these years, I finally understood. Emily, I was broken. I was shattered into a million pieces the day your mother died. But I couldn't show you that. I had a 7-year-old daughter who needed me to be strong. So I put myself back together, piece by piece, every single day. Not because I wasn't grieving, but because you needed me. She was crying again. We both were. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry I didn't see it. I'm sorry I made you feel like your sacrifices meant nothing. They didn't mean nothing. They meant everything. They just didn't turn out the way I hoped. What happens now? I took a deep breath. This was the moment I'd been building toward. The moment that would determine everything that came next. Now, you have a choice to make. What choice? You've lost your job, your fiancé, your apartment, I assume, since you probably can't afford it anymore. She nodded reluctantly. You could come to me and ask for money. Ask me to set you up in a nice apartment, give you a job at one of my companies, make all your problems disappear. Would you? I would, if that's what you wanted. But it wouldn't teach you anything. And I think you've finally reached a point where you might actually be ready to learn. Learn what? That success isn't about money or titles or what other people think of you. It's about who you become when everything is stripped away. It's about whether you can look at yourself in the mirror and be proud of what you see. Emily was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was steadier than I'd heard it all day. I can't look in the mirror right now, Dad. I'm too ashamed of what I've become. Then become something else. How? I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the rain had stopped. Sunlight was breaking through the clouds. There's an apartment available in one of my buildings. Nothing fancy. A studio on the 3rd floor of a walk-up in Lincoln Park. The previous tenant just moved out. You can stay there rent-free for 3 months while you figure out your next step. And after 3 months, you pay rent like everyone else. I won't charge you more than fair market rate, but I won't charge you less either. And a job? There's an opening at Holloway's Original, dishwasher. Minimum wage plus tips. Same job I started with 40 years ago. Emily stared at me. You want me to be a dishwasher? I want you to be someone who earns their place in the world. I want you to go to sleep exhausted and wake up knowing that everything you have, you worked for. I want you to know what it feels like to count out change for groceries and put back the things you don't absolutely need. This is insane. Maybe. But it's also the only offer on the table. What if I say no? What if I ask you for money anyway? Then I'll give it to you. You're my daughter. I'll never let you starve or be homeless. But I'll know that everything I tried to teach you was wasted. And I think you'll know it too. Emily sat there for several minutes, staring at her hands. I could see her working through it, fighting against every instinct that had been driving her for the past decade. Finally, she looked up. When can I start? 3 months later, I watched Emily from across the kitchen at Holloway's Original. Her hands were red and chapped from hot water. Her apron was stained with food residue. Her hair was pulled back in a hairnet, and she was sweating from the steam. She looked happier than I'd ever seen her. She'd moved into the studio apartment with nothing but a suitcase of clothes. She'd sold her expensive furniture, her designer shoes, her jewelry. The engagement ring had been returned to Derek, who had reportedly tried to pawn it, only to discover it was fake, a final insult from a family built entirely on appearances. Emily had started as a dishwasher, but she'd quickly proven herself. Within 6 weeks, she was working the prep station. After 2 months, she was helping with basic cooking. The other staff liked her, respected her work ethic, had no idea she was the boss's daughter. I hadn't told them, and Emily hadn't either. One evening, after closing, I found her sitting alone at the counter, eating a plate of leftover pasta. I sat down beside her. "Long day?" "They're all long days," she smiled. "But good ones. You seem different." "I feel different." She twirled spaghetti around her fork. "Did you know that Maria, the pastry chef, came to this country with nothing? Literally nothing. She built her entire life from scratch. And she's one of the happiest people I've ever met." "I know. I hired her. She told me something yesterday. She said, 'The secret to happiness isn't having everything you want. It's wanting everything you have.'" Emily laughed. "A year ago, I would have thought that was just something poor people say to make themselves feel better. Now I think it might be the truest thing I've ever heard. I'm proud of you, Emily." "Don't be. Not yet." She put down her fork and looked at me seriously. "I have a lot more work to do. On myself, I mean. I spent so many years building the wrong things. It's going to take time to build the right ones." "What are you building now?" "I don't know yet, but I know what I'm not building. I'm not building walls between myself and the people I love. I'm not building a fake version of myself to impress people who don't matter. I'm not building a life that requires me to be ashamed of where I came from." She reached out and took my hand. "Dad, I need to say something to you. Something I should have said a long time ago." "What's that?" "Thank you. For everything. For the sacrifices you made, even the ones I didn't know about. For loving me even when I didn't deserve it. For giving me this chance to start over when you had every reason to give up on me." I squeezed her hand. "Emily, I never gave up on you. Not for 1 second. I knew the real you was still in there, somewhere under all that fear and ambition. I just had to wait for her to find her way out." "How did you know she would?" "Because you're your mother's daughter. And Catherine Holloway was the strongest, most resilient person I ever knew. She would have found her way through anything. And so will you." Emily started crying again. But these were different tears, cleaner, somehow. "I love you, Dad. I love you too, sweetheart. Always have, always will." We sat there together in the empty restaurant, father and daughter, finally seeing each other clearly for the first time in years. 6 months later, Emily got her own place, a small 1-bedroom that she paid for with money she'd earned. She'd been promoted to sous chef, and she was dating a line cook named Marcus, who treated her like gold and didn't care about her family background because he didn't know about it. She still didn't know the full extent of my wealth. I'd told her about the company, but I'd downplayed the numbers. She thought I was comfortable, not rich. Maybe someday I'd tell her everything. Or maybe I'd let her discover it on her own, the way she was discovering everything else now. A year after that, Emily came to me with a business plan. She wanted to open her own restaurant. Nothing fancy, a small breakfast place in a working-class neighborhood, serving good food at fair prices. She didn't ask me for money. She asked for advice. I gave her both. Today, 3 years after that night on the sidewalk, I sit in the corner booth of Emily's breakfast nook, watching my daughter work the room. She knows every customer by name. She remembers their orders. She asks about their kids and their jobs and their lives. She's not ashamed of anything anymore. Not of me, not of herself, not of the journey that brought her here. Last week, she invited me to her wedding, a small ceremony at the courthouse, followed by a reception at her restaurant. Her husband, Marcus, came over and shook my hand and said, "Mr. Holloway, I want to thank you for raising the most incredible woman I've ever known." I didn't scream. I didn't beg for acknowledgement. I just stood there, watching my daughter dance with her husband, surrounded by the people she loved, in a restaurant she'd built with her own 2 hands. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt like I had done something right. The thing about tough love is that it's hard on everyone. Hard on the one giving it and hard on the one receiving it. There were nights during that first year when I wanted to call Emily and tell her everything was okay, that she didn't have to work so hard, that I would take care of her forever. But I didn't, because the best gift a parent can give their child isn't money or comfort or protection from the world. It's the chance to become someone worth being. Emily found that chance. She grabbed it with both hands and refused to let go. And that's a success no amount of money could ever buy. If you're watching this, and you're a parent struggling with a child who's lost their way, I want you to know something. Don't give up. Don't let them take the easy road. Sometimes the greatest act of love is stepping back and letting them fall, so they can learn to pick themselves up. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do. But it might also be the most important. And if you're watching this, and you're the child who's been taking their parents for granted, it's not too late. Pick up the phone. Say the words you've been holding back. Let them know that their sacrifices mattered. Let them know that they are loved. Because here's the truth about family. We don't get forever. We get moments. Precious, fleeting moments that slip through our fingers like water if we're not careful. Don't waste them on shame. Don't waste them on pride. Use them to build something real. I'm Richard Holloway. I'm 66 years old. I have a daughter who makes me proud every single day. And that's worth more than all the money in the world.